it's rare that exactly what you're looking for is available at that time. So she said no, and which was fine. But what happened was within 6 months max, our COO actually had some health challenges and eventually couldn't come back because of her health issues, which was really unfortunate. And I remember thinking, if this woman would have gotten on the bus, there's a good chance she probably would have been our COO within 6 months.
Hey, Nicole, what do you get when a former corporate CEO and a do-gooding executive walk into a recording studio?
Well, Erin, nothing, because the two of us are usually on my couch or Zoom, because wine.
You get a podcast created for Gen X women who are bought into the corporate world, but fed up with the BS.
I know, it's how to thrive the 9 to 5 or 6 or 7.
It's career therapy, it's comedy, it's definitely full-on authenticity. Basically, we give you tangible strategies to rise in your career without compromising everything else.
Because work doesn't have to suck.
Hey guys, it's Erin here. I'm jumping on again to do a solo episode. And, these things pop into my head. So I'm constantly like thinking and contemplating and rehashing and usually when I sort of get an idea or something I'm passionate about or story I remember, my natural inclination, to be honest, is to put it on LinkedIn. For whatever reason, that's like my natural megaphone outlet, not cerebrally, but it just, I don't know. It's where I feel most comfortable. And obviously I talk about work and business. And so from a social media perspective, that's the case. But I thought I'd pause. And instead of doing that, and I'll probably put both, put it out there as well. I thought I would just record it on a podcast. It'll be a really short one, but this is one that I don't know why. I can't even tell you why it popped into my head, but I can't get it out. And it's one of those passionate, tough love conversations I want to have with you and tell you a few stories behind it and why I'm so passionate. So you've probably heard, the sort of this concept of get the right people on the bus. And actually from this book, Good to Great, which is a classic, right, leadership book. And there's this concept about, good leaders just find good people, get them on the bus, and then figure out where to go. So instead of, having a position open and then going to find the right talent, the reality is that supply and demand never line up. They rarely line up, right? Where you're like, oh, okay, I now have this opening, this budgeted opening for an executive director of this or a manager of that. And supply, I found the perfect person. And so getting people on the bus essentially means find good people and bring them into maybe not an optimal job, but then, shuffle the chairs, not necessarily kick other people out or organization, but wait for the right opportunity. And you might not know this, but they do this with executives probably more than you know. I have a couple personal friends who were brought into companies this very way. And they're sort of sat in some positions. Sometimes it's a little bit nebulous. People sometimes probably are like, why did we have to hire somebody to do this? But part of it is because the timing is right. This executive is ready for a new role. They're ready to, jump ship from the other company or whatever. And they want to get them on the bus and then find the right thing. And this was certainly a lot of my success. I mean, my first big girl job, let's say, after I failed out of my actuarial profession and rotations, the first chance I was really given was by my former boss, Martha Temple. She essentially needed what she thought was sort of a project manager. She was running our international business for Aetna. And, at the time, it wasn't necessarily a bad position for me, but it was pretty unsexy. It was okay, I'm going to go do projects for her. And I was able to get that job. It was actually between me and another woman that I worked with. And we both had the same boss's boss. And I remember this guy, actually his name was Ray. I don't remember his last name, but I didn't know him well, but I remember him telling me that Martha went to him and said, look, I have 2 candidates within your organization. What do you think? And essentially he said, if you want somebody that's got more experience and more seasoned, pick this person, which wasn't me. But if you want to get, go for potential, I think you should pick Erin. And so I was lucky enough that, they had that conversation and he sort of saw that in me. And within months of me being this quote unquote project manager, of course, all of a sudden these big opportunities came up. We had to do, sort of 3-year strategic planning was a new thing. And so I got pulled into rooms with a bunch of really good connections throughout the company to figure out, how do we do these strategic plans? And then I think within the first year, they had a couple guys that were in product that were, I think, reporting to our head of sales, and they were kind of challenging. And she's like, "Well, let's give them to Erin." So I became a manager, and then from there it just exploded. I ended up leading our international expansion. And anyway, it was my first big girl job where I did huge things that really launched me into sort of this next level sphere. But I also saw it from my perspective as an executive who did bring people onto the bus a couple of times, and also somebody who I wanted to do that for and declined it. And so I wanted to tell you, a couple of those stories and just, then pound it into your head that, like, if a good leader, great leader, wants to bring you onto their quote unquote bus in a less than perfect role, but that has opportunity, freaking take it. You can finish, you don't even have to listen to my stories. That's the message. But I'm going to tell you a few stories. So I had a couple of people like this, where, one was introduced to me, actually, Erin Berube, who was on the podcast years ago, from another company. And one of our people said, "Oh, she's awesome. I would love to, we should try to get her over here." And again, we didn't always have open positions. We didn't have the perfect thing. I had conversations. I really liked her. And I finally pitched to her, "Look, I don't have probably exactly what you're looking for. I think, put her into like a sales support type role. But, the opportunities from there could be endless." And she took the opportunity to jump on the bus and came over and had a great career in our organization. There's another person, Stephanie Christino, who was in the larger enterprise organization. I knew she had a great reputation. She was hardworking and articulate and all the things you're looking for. But I also didn't have the perfect position. And the same thing, I sort of sold her on, come over, work on these really big projects that are kind of a mess. Act as kind of like a project manager to get, shit together on these. And then there'll be opportunities. And she did that. She crushed it. Next thing, I started really focusing on our culture and decided that, like, I would be a good starter and then I wouldn't finish it. So I needed somebody to really own that. And so I ended up promoting her. She wasn't reporting to me when she first came over, reporting directly to me. She became our chief culture officer, kind of a chief of staffy type role, and got to do really big things. And then, the one that sticks in my mind the most is the one that didn't. And I think the missed opportunities, and this isn't about, like, of course, I have no ill feelings or anything. It's really like, oh, God, she should have taken it. There was another woman, and I won't name names. I actually don't remember her name because she didn't take the opportunity to jump on the bus. But she was recommended by another peer of mine, another executive in the company. We were often, if we had people that were ready for new roles, we were good friends. We would sort of share and trade people. It was like, we joke, it was like our underground railroad. And these things happen, right? People are talking all the time and sharing talent where they have alliances. And she had a woman that had been in that division that she was leading for like 12 years. She had been sort of a lifer, and she was really good. She was sort of head of operations. But she was at that point where she was itching to do something new, but she really had to too. Like, if you're somewhere for 12 years, every year that you don't move, it gets harder, right? You kind of get pigeonholed, whether it's perception or you're lacking, sort of a view and perspective that is valuable for your next role. And I remember we had several conversations. I actually vividly remember walking the Etna basement with her and, talking to her about what she wanted and what she needed. And, she was sort of asking, and I was talking about, well, here's kind of the things we have open right now, but I feel like we continue to grow. We're doing well. And I feel like if you came over and maybe I put you in I can't remember what it was. There was probably some sort of project and it was reporting to our COO, work on this project. But I think there's opportunities for growth. I really see that in you. And she hemmed and hawed. And I think finances were an issue too. Like we couldn't really give her much of a bump at all because she was already pretty highly paid. So there were a lot of factors. But I remember sort of us discussing it, going back and forth for weeks. And, you know, this isn't meant to be pretentious, but I do this for everybody, right? Like if a leader is sort of having these kinds of get on the bus questions with you, they're not doing with everybody else. It takes time, like they're busy. And so again, not ill feelings, but just know like I wasn't doing this with 12 people at a time. It was probably 3 or 4 people a year. And, so eventually she decided not to sort of take the chance. She got sort of really wrapped around like, well, I was hoping for this sort of level role or this kind of role or, that perfect, like how many people report to you? What do you make? What's the title? And I tell people all the time, like I said at the beginning, supply and demand rarely lines up. It's rare that exactly what you're looking for is available at that time. So she said no, and which was fine. But what happened was within 3 months, six months max, our COO actually had some health challenges. And she went out on short-term disability and eventually couldn't come back because of her health issues, which was really unfortunate. And I remember thinking, if this woman would have gotten on the bus, there's a good chance if she would have performed like I'm sure she would have because I had references, she probably would have been our COO within 6 months. And what a missed opportunity. And so I think of it again, not in terms of any ill will, but more as like this passionate plea, coaching, like smack you in the face. When these opportunities rise, you have to seriously consider them. And in fact, not just when they rise, like you can even make them happen. It's, I always have the saying, I haven't said it in a while on the podcast, finding your next job is like it's like buying a house. It's all about location, location, location. And if you bring that metaphor forward, that means like when you're looking for a house, if you don't have an unlimited budget, there's probably some things you're gonna have to compromise on, right? Especially if it's your first house or your first like big kid house. And so many people get caught up in, well, but I want the really nice kitchen with the, white countertops and the, white cabinets and the remodeled bathrooms. And so they get that, but they get it in a shitty neighborhood and it's a long drive to their work or to their family or, they compromise on these other things. And they don't realize if they would have just slowed their roll and bought the one in the nice neighborhood, close to work, close to family, they can remodel, right? Those things all can be changed. And it's no different with jobs. And if you start to realize that that perfect match is highly unlikely and that your better strategy is to look for the house that you can remodel, i.e. the company culture and the leader that is great, in which you're going to have the opportunity to remodel, possibly within months of taking that job. And you can set aside your ego a little bit, right? And not care so much about what people are going to say, oh, I can't believe they took that job. Like, that's the stuff that, me not giving a shit when I took a job, for example, in Payflex when I became, where I became the CEO 4 years later, when I went from leading 40 people, managing 40 people to 0, which you can see in your Outlook thing. People knew that I no longer had anybody double clicked under me. But because I just didn't care. I cared, but not as much, I think, as everybody else. And I took that job anyway. Holy shit, did I do some remodeling? And not only did I become CEO, but if I wouldn't have done that, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm right now. I wouldn't have the platform. I wouldn't have the experiences. I wouldn't have the clout. I wouldn't have the ideas. There's just so much payoff if you remodel. There's so much payoff if you jump on the bus. So again, next time you even have a hint of a great leader and a great company trying to get you on a bus that's maybe not taking you exactly where you want to go, get on the frickin' bus. Hey there, it's Erin. I'm just popping in real quick to ask you a question. Is there any chance you know someone who is looking for a keynote speaker for their upcoming event? Look, I know that many event organizers, they struggle to find a speaker who provides both tangible value and business knowledge, but that also lights their audience on fire. And I truly believe there aren't many speakers like me out there who are both former corporate executives and professionally trained speakers. And there's definitely none that roll in with an orange suitcase they unpack with their audience. Trust me on that. I would love nothing more than to bring my message of using authenticity as your strategic career and business advantage to people spinning in your universe, especially if you'd be there. I promise my talks always create an immediate buzz, but not just right after, but for months and years after the event is over. You can learn more about my message, style, and reviews, and share my speaking info by going to beauthenticinc.com/keynote-speaking. That's B, just the letter B, authenticinc.com/keynote-speaking. Or of course, we have it right in the show notes to make it easy for you too.